Hello, it's Stacy Allen again from Achievers Prep, and welcome to another edition of It's All Education, the podcast. I have a very special guest who's been with us before and who is well-versed in a number of topics. And today, Mr. Dale Brown is going to be coming to us and discussing pro-humanism. So the next voice you hear will be that of Mr. Dale Brown. Take it away, Mr. Brown.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so glad you are here. We were having a discussion before we started recording about pro-humanism. I want you to tell my audience and everyone who's listening, everyone who's tuned in to the video podcast, everyone who's listening via audio, tell us what being a pro-humanist or pro-humanism, tell me what that is. Describe that for us.
Essentially, the way I describe pro-humanism is this: people that are supportive and focused on the achievement and success of people in general. And that is bringing all people together under the idea of being more humane towards each other, being emphasizing human compassion, empathy, protection, and love of all humanity in general. So imagine reimagining the idea that all humans should be supportive and should be protective of all other humans. We should look at each other as extended members of family, the same family, and we should provide, as we would, the same for others as we would for ourselves, because we are all humans and we should all be looking at each other in a positive way. And that's what pro-humanism is: simply the love of all humanity and being humane towards other humans and celebrating the success of others and protecting each other as we should. As we want someone to protect our families, we should be willing to do that for other people's families as well.
Now, when you speak about pro-humanism, and we speak about because everything you're saying basically is upholding the Constitution as we know it, and just recognizing that all of us are created equal, basically, because we're all human beings on a very core basic level. So let's go a little bit deeper, Mr. Brown. Let's talk about the division of people based on the fictitious notion of a race. Let's speak about that.
That's great that you brought that up, because that is the foundation of failure of humanity. And that is the idea that race even exists. Race is fiction. Race is the foundation of something called racialism. Racialism was the idea that race existed, and then it turned into racism, the application of how that pseudoscience, racialism, was applied to humanity. And in order for us as humans to have humanity, we must remove all the things that are the foundation of inhumanity. And what is the foundation of inhumanity? Race is one of the fundamental factors. Now, race for the Afro-European enslaved descendants of Africans that were enslaved and the enslavers that were European, and which is why we have European names to this very day. My name is Dale Brown, which is obviously not from my African ancestry. My features are also of the DNA of some Europeans at some point in my background, although my parents were both African American or Afro-European, and all of my immediate family members were, that I grew up with, all Afro-European, meaning what we call in our average American training of descendants of enslaved people, we're called Blacks or Coloreds or Negroes based upon how old we are at this time. So my grandmother's time period, she's in her 80s when she passed a short time ago, she would be called a Negro. So if you were to call her Black, she'd be upset. Also, Black is the way that they would dehumanize other members of the Afro-European community. They would call them Blacks. And they didn't allow Blacks in HBCU, historically Black college universities. They did not allow Blacks. HBCU is a new term. HBCU is not something they called it back then. So just like the Black Greek fraternities, which is oxymoronic in and of itself, they did not allow people that they call Blacks to be in those organizations. You had to be, according to the Afro-European descendants of enslaved Africans, you had to be lighter than a brown paper bag. We called it the brown paper bag test in the Afro-European community. So the idea that colorism, racialism, and race exist are all things designed specifically to keep people separated and segregated along false lines so that you cannot create a safe or more successful society for anyone. Every group gets separated that way. European Irish people, European Jews, European Muslims, European Catholics from Poland, European pagans, European Protestants, and European Greeks and Italians and Irish were all considered different types and levels of people. And therefore they had no rights based upon what region they were in or what time period. So pale skin did not make them somehow connected. And we need to let all that fictional race miseducation go so that we can all be open to learning what is true. And what is true is that all human beings are from what we call Al-Kibalan, the original land we call now Africa, but all humans are from the same place anyway, genetically. So we need to be honest, move forward, and realize that all humans are from the same human family, and we need to all look at each other as family, and then respect the positives and understand the negatives of each ethnic community based on land, association, religion, language, family name. Just because your name is Hitler doesn't mean you're bad. But if you are Hitler, the one that we know that actually did those crimes against humanity, you are bad. And anybody who supports Hitler is bad, that is supportive of their Nazi regime. But the word Hitler would not be bad in and of itself, but the name of that criminal would definitely be a horrible name. So understand the difference between the different types of people and their names and their religions and their languages are very important to understanding that in Germany right now, they don't celebrate Hitler. They don't teach in a positive way about Hitler because they don't want German children in the future to celebrate Hitler. They want to learn from the mistakes. So in Germany right now, you can't have a statue of any person that was related to the Nazi regime. Just like in America, we are now taking down the statues of people that are part of the Confederacy.
Now that is where I kind of, I apologize for interrupting you, but that is where I kind of wanted to interject and kind of bring in what the purpose of our conversation is today. You have presented to us, obviously, the problem or the issue or the thing that we have to overcome and solve. Now tell us, Dr. Brown, Doctor, you notice I called you Dr. Brown. That's just me being facetious, but I say that only because I certainly do admire you, and I admire some of the things that you say, many of the things that you say, and many of the beliefs that you stand for. And I want you to communicate to the people what it is you foresee we can do as a solution to start overcoming some of this diversity that has been taught to us and programmed into us generation after generation after generation. What can we start to do as a solution to overcome and start to unlearn these thoughts and behaviors?
In order to unlearn inappropriate thoughts and behaviors, look at the origin. Where is it from? Who said that? Why did they say that? Whatever it is, no matter what it is that you heard, whatever someone taught you, look at the origin of the information first. Look at the purpose of that information. What did it yield? Not what did you think, but what did it yield? When someone said X, Y, Z, what did someone else do with that information? What actions were taken? And then use those, the proof, the actual, not the feelings, but the proof. Use the proof to determine whether something was right or something was wrong. So whether you think witches were good or bad is not important. What's important is what made people go to a town, 60,000 European women taken and tortured in front of a crowd of Christians, by Christians, and then killed. Why did that happen? Why did 60,000 women have to die? And what was the impetus? What caused that to happen? You can't just simply say, well, people just thought they're witches. You could say that, but that would not help you understand the actual truth. The truth is that a church came and took the land of widows that had no husband and no fighting age son. That's how you qualify to be called a witch. So once you understand human behavior, you'll see that there's always a way to justify the killing of human beings. There's always a way to justify the abuse of human beings in every culture, in every community, every religion. So truth is, do you want that to happen to your family? Would you like that thing, whatever this is, whatever human ideology, whatever human belief system, whatever human action, do you want that for your family? If you don't want that for you and your family, then you should not allow it for someone else and their family. That's all you have to do in order to know what's right and what's wrong, is put yourself in the story and see if this is what you want for you and your family. And if it's not right for you and your family, it's not right for anyone else and their families. And you should not be treating someone differently than you want to be treated. It's a very simple principle. And this is where we mess up as a human species. We begin to qualify people for abuse. We begin to qualify them. There's a reason to always kill women throughout human history. Women must be killed, offered to the sun god as virgins. There's always some reason we must kill girls and women as a human society. We need to investigate that. And more importantly, we need to stop it. We need to stop the abuse of women. Femicide has been a problem since humans existed. Even religions like to blame females for problems within the religion or the human group, saying that she did this and took an apple or the whatever she did, and then she killed, she became evil, whatever. Each religion has their own adaptation on why women are horrible, why they must be tortured, why they must be kept from power. How about this? How come major religions don't allow females to be the representatives of those religions? So this is how you know there's something wrong. Because anytime you're looking at gender or skin color or regional location or height or weight or anything, anytime you look at any of these phenotypes or gender related issues, and then you're deciding human performance based upon that, not performance, but actually some other kind of
metric,
very thing, right? You're now going down the wrong path. And that's how you know that you should not have been using something other than meritocracy, something other than actual performance to determine performance. And when we do that as human beings, we distort the results, we actually create a perverse parallax is what I call it. This parallax distorts the view. It says to you, there's a good reason we must do this negative thing. We must bomb these people. We must torture these people. We must, if you look at the witches, again, 60,000 women had to be killed. I thought that was odd, so I did more research and I found out that in order to qualify to be a witch, you couldn't be an African-American witch. You couldn't be a European, other kind of witch. Every witch had to have several things in common. First and foremost, they had to own land. No church wants to torture a poor witch that owns nothing. I thought that was odd. Wait, so when you come to town, you're looking for women that own stuff? Yes, you're looking for women that own a house or land, and the church happens to help you because what they'll do is take the evil property off your hands of your town and bless it, and then they took it into the control of the church. But meanwhile, they'll get rid of the witch for you for free. And the witch, in order to qualify a witch, you had to have no men that could fight the inquisitors, and you had to make sure that the husbands were dead. So this, if your husband died of old age or died of sickness or died in war, then these inquisitors would come there and kill the wife and take the land, and that's how you became a witch. But prior to that, they also tortured the witches or the women. They tortured them with these different types of sexual devices. So now you have inquisitors, men, all men, no female inquisitors, that would come and volunteer to torture women with sexual devices. And if you told them you were a witch, you died quicker. If you didn't tell them you were a witch, you got sexually tortured longer. And then they would drown you typically in front of other Christians in town, and all the children would grow up watching women being killed in their towns.
So what about the stories and the accounts of, even married people, married women who were called witches because they practiced some sort of ritual behavior that was often linked to their spiritual belief, but it was viewed as a sign of some type of witchcraft or some type of dark magic?
No, actually, when I did my research, I didn't find that. So that's what I thought. I thought it was because they were doing something. No, some of them weren't doing nothing, right? That was the movies. That's how they adapted it for us and try to make it seem logical. So remember, the movies and TV shows and all those things are misleading us. So once you do the research, you'll find it's totally different. Everything that you're thinking, that we are thinking, as we got these these visual impressions we got from watching movies and TV shows. Even though it's just movies and TVs, we know that as movies and TV shows, we still have visual impressions. When I watched Roots, I really thought that, that's my belief system in slavery was that. I didn't know that 300,000 enslaved Afro-Europeans were were held captive. Nobody owned anyone. There was no such thing as a slave. There were people that were enslaved. It's a very big difference in English language between being a slave and being a person enslaved. So
Can
let's
you
be
tell us
clear.
what that difference is? Clarify that, because this is all education at the end of the day.
Because when
So
you say
explain the difference between being a slave and being enslaved, and an enslaved people.
right, so if you say someone is a prostitute, that is someone that is selling themselves. If you say someone is being sexually trafficked, a sex trafficking victim, that means they're being prostituted by someone. Those are two separate things. A woman has the right to do whatever she wants with her body, but no man should be coming along, or a woman should come along and make another woman or girl sell themselves for the profit of another person. Okay, there's a huge difference between a person selling themselves, because that's what they feel like doing, and a person being sold by others. So a slave is someone who, in English language, would mean that is who you are. An enslaved person is a person who happens to be taken against their will and enslaved. Those are two separate things.
So the slave would be a slave by choice, is what you're saying?
Right. So when you say that someone's a slave, that just means that's who they are. You've already assumed, you created a false axiom. They are a slave. No, they're not. They're a person that's being enslaved, and that is a crime. Anyone who enslaves them is a criminal. And so Thomas Jefferson was a criminal. He was a rapist. He was raping his children. He was raping a mixed girl that was actually his relative that was sold to him, Sally Hemings, who he kept in a dungeon, who had 7 living children. How many children died? We don't even know. But you can imagine they're having sex a lot since she was 14 or younger. And then she had to have babies in the dark because she was in a dungeon, literally no windows. The room was 9 feet by 13. They found it. They found her space, her actual living space, which was next to his bedroom in a subterranean space. And the enslaved people on the plantation at Monticello said that they would see her from time to time, and she was really pretty, very light complected and very pretty, but she was kept in the dungeon most of the time. She lived in a dungeon basically her whole life. After Thomas Jefferson died, she was not given her freedom either. She was sold again to someone else.
But there are accounts of that story, that vary widely. And there are accounts that she was able to go to Europe with him.
She went to Europe, and what they failed to explain to people is that she was a child when she went to Europe, number one. And when she decided to go back, it's because if she didn't go back, they would kill people in her family, and they would torture them, and they would also kill anyone that she cared about if she did not go back. So when she went back, like all enslaved people, what they held over your head was the fact they would torture, rape, and kill your family members back home. So that's why you didn't run away from plantations, not because you were a coward and scared of freedom. It's because you knew, as a Southern enslaved African Afro-European person or Afro-European person, you knew that if you left that plantation, everyone on that plantation would be tortured, which is why everyone on the plantation would not want you to leave in the first place and would tell on you. It's not because of crabs in the barrel. The reason why they would tell on you is because if you leave, the people that are left behind, their children will be tortured for your behavior because you left the plantation and they didn't tell on you. So communal punishment was normal in the enslaved communities. So this is why enslaved people did not have any camaraderie. There was no mutual camaraderie amongst enslaved people because you would be punished. And now, when I say punished, I mean horribly mutilated. Your body would be mutilated. So your children would be tortured and or killed. You would be beheaded in certain cases. They would behead entire communities. In one case, when Nat Turner rebelled, they cut off 300 heads of enslaved African European enslaved people, 300 heads, put them on pikes and put them along the Virginia Parkway. Okay, 300 heads of people that were not involved. These are people just stayed on plantation, did their work, sang the songs, picked the cotton, did what they're supposed to, and still got their heads put on a pike. 300 people.
So essentially what you're saying is that everything that we know right now is skewed. So you should be looking for truth. You should
Yes,
be looking for the origin of the information and
yes.
looking for truth. And once you find it, then you have to process what in fact that means. Mr. Brown, we are going to stop this right here because this is some good stuff. And I know you want to continue because I know you have more to say on this topic and on this issue, and there's more for us to learn. I, for one, am all ears, and I know what my audience will be too. So we're going to stop it right here. We're going to end this particular episode. We'll come back with a part 2, humanism, pro-humanism part 2. So this will be pro-humanism part 1, and we'll come back with pro-humanism part 2, and we'll pick up from there, and we'll start dealing with the solutions and what we can do to start establishing and finding the origins of this information, because we have to talk about that too, Mr. Brown. We have to talk about the fact that historically access to information was denied. Access denied. And we live in the most wonderful time of our lives because information is free, but there's also a lot of misinformation out there, and we have to be able to vet the information that we are researching.
I look at you got multiple sources, always multiple sources.
Multiple sources.
Yes, never look at any one source. Look for 10 sources. Because you're going to find there's a consensus. The consensus starts to happen once you look at all of it. When you look at one story, you'll be misled either way. You want to look at multiple sources, and you can put it together, and you'll be able to figure. That's how you put it together. Like, this person says this, they say that, and then you understand why all those things were there, right? Once you understand that, you can understand the why. Remember, the why is the key. Ask why. Always ask why. When you ask why enough times in a row, you will get to the truth. All you have to do is keep asking why. And there's always a benefit to every negative. So all you have to do is figure out why, look who benefited, and that is going to give you the truth.
That's it. Okay, we're going to end it right here. And as always, I normally say the human experience is our classroom, and life itself is our teacher. And at the end of the day, it's all education. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.